Hello and welcome. Tonight's webinar is How to Stay on Track for the Summer Fun and Engaging Activities for Reading and Math. It's hosted by the Learning Disabilities Association of America. We're so glad you joined us tonight. My name is Beth McGaw and I'm going to be your moderator for tonight. So let's take a few minutes to go over the housekeeping notes before I hand it over to our presenters. So everybody is in listen-only mode right now. That means you can hear me, but we can't hear you. But there is a way for us to hear you. So what you need to do is when you have questions, you go down to the bottom of the chat box. It's located on the right side of your screen, and you can type in your messages down there. We're hoping to get lots of questions. And we will answer those at the end of the presentation. If you have questions specifically related to your child, we ask that you contact the presenters, and they'll be happy to help you with any questions you might have. And we will also try and put a list of the questions up on our website after the webinar. This webinar will be recorded, and it will be ready almost immediately, I think, after the webinar. We're using a new format, so if any of you have attended any LDA webinars before, we're testing out a new platform called Webinar Jam. It's going to be a lot more, I think, fun, a little bit more interactive than GoToWebinar, and so hopefully you'll find it helpful and engaging. So let's go on and talk a little bit about our presenters. Jenny Simak and Dr. Jen Raleigh. Jenny and Jen are speaking to us tonight from Dallas, Texas. Jenny Simak is a teacher at Dallas Academy in Dallas, Texas. She's an instructor for the Institute for Multisensory Education as well as a private Orton Gillingham tutor. And Jenny is also the parent of two boys, one who has learning disabilities. Jenny has presented sessions reflecting her passion for the effectiveness and application of the multisensory approach at the LDA conferences for the past 2 years. Dr. Jen Raleigh is a licensed psychologist who specializes in pediatric psychology with a particular emphasis on learning disorders, autism spectrum disorders, and behavior attention disorders. She's currently the director of the Dallas Academy Diagnostic Center and an adjunct college professor at Argosy University. Her additional experience includes work in private practice, psychiatric hospitals, private community health clinics, and with at-risk youth. Jen has a daughter who has diagnosed nonverbal learning disability, as well as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and her daughter also attends Dallas Academy. Jen says that her daughter is an inspiration and a source of encouragement for her. Dr. Raleigh also serves on the Learning Disability Association board, and she also is active here in Texas. So I might also add to the credentials of Jenny and Jen that they are both very positive and fun individuals. So I think you're going to take away a lot from this webinar because they have a lot of great information to share. So let's turn the floor over to Jenny and Jen.
Good evening. This is Jenny Simak, and welcome to the webinar this evening. You'll notice that we're broken into two sections. Both of them focus on fun and engaging reading and math activities to help your student or child stay on track through the summer. Part one is going to focus on making time on the go count. I think we can all relate to the current society. We're hurrying up to wait, so we're in a rush and then we're waiting on our siblings, we're waiting on lights, so we're going to make the most of that time on the go. We'll walk through the slides together, and again, if you have questions, I would welcome those, and you just enter those in the chat bar to the right of your screen, and we will address those at the end of the webinar. We're going to start really with the basics. We're going to go back to some phonological awareness and look at how our students progress. One of the things that I think is super important and typically starts to fall off after first grade is practicing with listening skills and rhyming and just identifying sentence segmentation. So we're going to start at the very beginning and kind of review those and kind of just build some activities with our children that are still fun regardless of age or ability. Just as a reminder, phonological awareness, those activities are the things that we can do with our eyes closed. So think about this right now. If you're sitting in your home, close your eyes, the lights are turned off, maybe you're sitting in the car in traffic, of course your eyes are open, please keep your eyes open. But there are so many fun and engaging games to play. So if we had, starting with listening, if you close your eyes and just name the sounds you hear. Maybe you're talking with your child in the back seat or in the cart at the grocery store. Think about the animals that you pass if you're on the road. Think about the people or animals that you see on books or magazines as you're waiting to check out. Maybe you can make the sound that matches the animal you see. Maybe you can quiz your student. What kind of animal would bark? What kind of animal would moo? The important thing is that you're not cluttering the environment with any kind of visual support. This is strictly a listening activity. You would build on that later with phonemes, which is the sounds, and the graphemes, which are the letters. You can also include some apps that practice these skills, so we'll incorporate apps at each level as we discuss them. A couple for phonemic awareness. I think in my generation when we were growing up we played Simon Says or the Simon games with the 4 colors, the green, yellow, red, and blue, and they also had a tone. So again, there was no letter or direction, you just followed the way the buttons lit up and the tone that they made, and you would mimic those. So we have I mimic, I says, Simon Says. A couple of those first 3 are going to maybe remind you of playing that game when you were younger as well. But again, those can be downloaded on your handheld devices. Moving to the next step would be rhyming. It is really important for students, especially students who are struggling with reading, to go back and practice these steps, and rhyming are fun regardless of our age. So I've given a couple of examples. These are by no means the end-all be-all, but we're just going to give you a variety. Using rhyming phrases, and I would caution a lot. I hear parents and of students that I tutor or students in the classroom, I hear them say, well, that's not even a real word. And I just want to point out from the very beginning, real words count, but nonsense words count too. So a mouse lives in a house. A mouse lives in a louse. Like all of those things would be acceptable answers as long as they rhymed with the other major noun. A bear has brown hair. And you can just continue. They can make up words. A layer has brown fair. It really doesn't matter. Just focus on the rhyming. That is a fundamental skill for reading later on. Another fun thing that even my 12-year-old and I like to do, we use familiar tunes and songs and then invent new rhymes and sing them to the songs that we already know. So I've given an example of If You're Happy and You Know It, and I know you're all on pins and needles. You think I'm going to sing, but I'm not. You can make a rhyme book. There are some great apps even to do that on an iPad or a phone. I think it's 53 pages. It's like an online scrapbook, and it's literally like you just write with your finger. It will work with a stylus as well, and it turns the page just like you would if you had a real journal in front of you. There's also apps that are more like a game to focus on rhyming skills. I've given an example of that at the bottom of the current screen. That's called Rhyming Bee. There is a light version for free. There's also the full app with different rhymes, which are the different ending sounds, for $2.99. So you see that the bee is flying in and he's holding a heart that says bad, and you have 2 flower pots. So you have to figure out which flower has the rhyming words for bad. So on the one on the left, you have had, sad. Obviously, you would drop that heart on the flower petal on that flower versus the ed rhyme ending. I've also listed at the bottom of each screen resources where some of these activities can be found. A great resource is the book by Marilyn Adams, Phonemic Awareness in Young Children. And they have a lot of great activities for each of these stages that we walk through. So we've talked about listening. We've talked about rhyming. Now we're going to look at sentence segmentation. This may seem like something that is a no-brainer. It's, I think, often skipped over in terms of value. But this can be done on the go, and there's also some manipulative play that you can do at home. Even just counting out the words in a sentence. This is different from syllables. We're really just looking for whole words. So I would start with something super simple. The example I have on the screen right now is Dan sings. So you would want them to either make a check mark on a paper. Again, it can be on one of those drawing page apps or something. They can clap it out. They can show you the 1, 2 on their hand, just holding up fingers. I've also given an option for even just using small squares of construction paper or post-it notes, or even Unifix cubes or blocks. Legos. We all have Legos, probably. I even have some in my car right now. Then you would just continue to add words and continue counting. Make that same base sentence, Dan sings, and make it more complex. Change some of the verbs. Talk about sings versus sang, present versus past tense. You can see the second example, I even changed it to a question. So we want to model the different types of sentences, even from the very beginning. The variation at the bottom of this slide would be the next level if you're still working on this skill. Add those multisyllable words to the sentences, but continue to only count whole words. Dan saying softly to the audience. Maybe the first time your student or child hears that, they're going to count the syllables. And that's your clue that perhaps they're ready to move on to that next level as well, which is syllables. So it's really important to be able to count syllables, because when your student is encoding a word, when they're trying to spell the word, that's what they're going to break the word down into, the syllables, to sound it out. You want them to be able to do that without the print initially. So you might even discuss with an older student, even some of my middle schoolers, there are spelling rules that apply based on where the accent falls in the word. So from the earliest stages, you need to talk about syllables and use words with stress. Conduct versus conduct. Maybe if your student's ready to have the conversation, if they can put those words into a sentence, talk about that one's a noun and one's a verb. I think that's a great conversation to have. One of my favorite games is, oh my goodness, and when I transferred it, I see the illustration covered up some of my text, is I Spy. So we have several of those I Spy books, but again, you can just play in the car. We play it on vacation all the time, and I have a 16-and-a-half-year-old and a 12-and-a-half-year-old, and they would probably be super embarrassed that I'm telling them, everyone, that we still play I Spy. But the idea is that you use concrete objects, things that you can physically hold or can currently see, and then move to more abstract items like feeling words. And again, you're still counting the syllable. You can even increase it in difficulty or variation even further by looking at the picture of something and saying, I see something red with 3 syllables. So I guarantee you, those that are currently online looking, you're trying to figure that out. I've got an apple, apple, only 2. I see a lobster, only 2. So the red thing with 3 syllables that I can see currently is a tomato, which would be 3 syllables. So again, just some options if your student needs some reinforcement in that. The next level would be onset and rhyme. So I've given some visuals off to the right margin. Explode the Code is a really great resource. It goes through book 8, and it even has some before the code and beyond the code books. but Explode the Code itself is books 1 through 8. And you can see that they're adding print. So it goes along with onset and rhyme, but in phonological awareness, we're still going to do it without the print. One of the really fun games that we even use in my middle school classroom is we play 20 questions. So you would use the first sound, and you're developing their reasoning and problem-solving skills. So I'm going to think of something, and you're going to need to guess what it is. So I would say, I'm thinking of something that begins with a S, which is the S sound. I would ask them to repeat the sound to make sure that they are on the same page. Then I would say, the thing that I'm thinking about has 2 legs and can fly. I guarantee you, most of my students are like, oh, I know, it's Superman. Well, I like that Superman starts with S, but now I need to give you another clue. It has feathers. So does Superman have feathers? No. So you continue the questioning. The word that I was thinking of was seagull. So perhaps I had secretly hung some pictures around the room if they needed visual support, or if I had something in the car, or not, if I knew that they had that in their vocabulary. Some other games, you can just list the words, and you can words that rhyme, like we have the AT family, the at family. And then you can do phoneme manipulation. This is a really, really difficult skill, and it falls right in line with the phonological awareness skills to prepare for reading and writing. If I have fear and I take off the f, what do I have left? Which would be ear. So you can do that with the initial phonemes, the first sounds. You can do that at a higher level, which would be taking off the final sound. And then the third level, or third stage, would be trading out the medial sound, those vowel sounds in the middle. And you can see that I didn't stick with short vowels. You can do long vowels. You can do any kind of vowel pattern. Because you don't have the print in front, you're strictly going off the sound. Excuse me. Okay, we're going to move into some apps, because if your child is anything like mine and the students in my classroom, they are better equipped and better able to manipulate new technology than I am. And so we're going to give you some inexpensive, sometimes free apps. Some of them are available only on iTunes, and some of them have slight variations and are also available on Kindle Fire and Android. So these will be in the reference section for you to review also at the end of the webinar. The first one I'd like to focus on is Alphabetics. I've given a picture of a screenshot to the left. Alphabetics is really great for the younger student. It's going to model individual letter names and sounds. It's going to offer capital and lowercase letter formation. It will show the letter, and then it will have the student trace it, and it even has the auditory clue. It sounds like you're writing on a chalkboard as your finger traces the letter. So it's going to activate the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic pathways. And from the research from Orton Gillingham and others in the multisensory fields, the research shows us that when you activate the students' visual, auditory, and kinesthetic pathways, it builds the most connections in the brain. And I would describe it as like the strands of a rope. So if you have just like a string, and you like interlock your index fingers together and you try to pull it apart. So if one string comes apart, you lose the tension in your rope. So the more strands that you have, if you made a fist with your palms together, interlocked fingers, and then you tried to pull your arms apart or pull your hands apart, it's much more difficult. And so it has that sticking power. So all of the apps that we're going to go through today are really about building the most kinesthetic pathways, auditory pathways, and visual pathways in the brain, so that your students build the foundation skills. OG Cards, that is a free app. I believe it's just available on iTunes. It is built by Meyerson Academy. It is Orton Gillingham based, and what's great about OG Cards is that you can sort based on the letter. You can look at short vowels, magic E, all the different syllable types, vowel teams, diphthongs, and then once you go into each one of those syllable types, then you have the option to look at the visual, and it will show you the visual letter. It will show you mouth-focused pronunciation. It will give the auditory enunciation. It will use it in a word. And then you can actually record your own. If you wanted it in your voice or if you wanted your student to practice, there's a record feature as well. The third one on this specific slide is called Kids Glow. And this is really fun. It's got a black background, and your student selects the color and the glow and can activate their visual and kinesthetic pathways. Perhaps you dictate the sound or words, and the student's going to use Kids Glow to write the coordinating letter or spell the word on their screen. It's just really fun and visually kind of entertaining. So they think they're playing, but they're actually practicing foundational skills. Another app that is really great is called Build-A-Word. And this is kin to Elkonin boxes, which we'll see later when we actually do some paper pencil practice. This is still in our on-the-go segment. So they give you the 3 boxes, as you see in the visual on the left, and it gives you the kind of letter bank at the top, and you can see the vowels in a different color. So they're going to manipulate the letter tiles and drop them into the correct order. This individual app is $2.99. That specific one was called Easy Spelling. But I also found that for $4.99, that app is also included in a bundle. And I am not familiar with School Tool, but I know that there are some others. The Express one that I have on the right, it brings in digraphs and vowel teams in the fourth one. So that might be an option. Oops, sorry. There are several more that are more game. Spellyfish came highly recommended. Use segment and blend words. The only downside to this for some users may be that it only focuses on one short vowel at a time, and each individual short vowel app is $2.99. So you can see some samples. I've included the website where you might look for additional information on Spellyfish. Phonics Tic-Tac-Toe is by Lakeshore Learning. I know they're popular in the South and the West. This is a really quick-paced game. It explores vowel sounds, syllables, and more. The visual on the left shows the tic-tac-toe board, and I know it's a little bit difficult to see, but there's a visual representation of the word, so there's a picture, and there's also a short description. So then the choices under each picture, the user is actually picking the vowel sound, and on this specific example there were short vowels and bossy R's, which would be like the E-R, I-R, U-R. So they're hearing the sound and matching it to the picture, and when they're correct on their turn, then their X or O takes over that spot. And K-12 phoneme videos is very similar to the OG cards we spoke about a moment ago, where you can hear and see the phonemes, and that app is also free. So lots of great games. This slide shows a favorite of my middle school students and my tutoring students. I've actually tutored a high school student who was a fan of this game, Chictionary. And the idea behind this is that you have 7 chickens roosting, and they each have 1 letter, and you're playing kind of like building words. So the number of eggs at the top show how many letters there are, and you just arrange them and hit enter, and if you're correct, it fills in the eggs. If you did not build a real word, then they kind of cluck at you and then throw those letters back on the bellies of the chickens. There are a minimum of 3-letter words. The trick is that there is one word that will have all 7 letters, and I will tell you that I get sucked into this game because sometimes they're a little tricky to figure out, and at the very end, if you can play time trial, or you can have an unlimited time, and then you finally give up and you're just like, show me what they are. And then you're like, oh man, I knew that. So, but that's really fun, and I think it really appeals to students of all ages and abilities, because even if your goal was to get all of the 3-letter words, and then maybe you can work together and get some of the four-letter words, because not all of them are going to fall in line with just short vowel sounds or just vowel teams or anything like that. It would incorporate a variety of syllable types. Again, there's another app called Little Speller. I've highlighted the free version, and that's where I would always recommend starting if there's a light version, to see if it is something that your student finds fun, which is why we're providing a variety of, of options. They're showing examples of the visual dog, and then they have the letter tiles spaced around the screen, and then your student would drag and drop. The thing that I really like about this level is that on the dog one, you can see that the D, O, and G are faintly written on the gray boxes where you'll drop the D down. You can see where it goes, but then you can see the next one underneath where the bat is. Those levels, that support has been removed, so they have the B, A, and T, and you'll just drop them where you hear the sound. If you mistake, then they pop back up to the top. Okay, on the next slide. This company, BugBrain Ed, or BugBrained, I'm not even sure how they pronounce it, they have so many fabulous apps. I'm going to highlight a couple of them today, but if you search BugBrained or BugBrain Ed, you will see a variety. They have phonics, they have fluency, they have math, and we're going to just look at a couple today just to kind of let you know what's out there. This app is easily manipulated by young learners. I've had kindergarten students use this, and anyone who is going back to work with short vowels and digraphs and blends with short vowels, this app is the one you're looking for. It does have the blue stripes. It's fun and engaging. Some of the things that are frustrating about some apps, and it's really user preference, is the voice that is dictating the names of the words or the sounds. And this guy, in fact, another teacher was listening to it with me and it drove her crazy, but I think he's super easy to understand. There's really not an accent, in my opinion, which is sometimes a challenge for regional dialects. It is illustrated, so it's going to teach the user about segmentation before adding letters. So you can see at the bottom of this screen, I have shown the clip where it's like the caterpillar, and he's got the caterpillars in 3 sections, and then they added the graphemes for TH, and then the short I, and then the S, and the app continually models segmenting and blending, which is so key for literacy at all levels. They have to be able to analyze a word, whether it's a word that they have in their mind that they're trying to spell on paper, or whether they're decoding it. They're looking for those recognizable chunks, and they're going to analyze it, and then they're going to blend it or synthesize that back together to build the word. Like I mentioned, this one includes digraphs and onset blends. We mentioned earlier with the dog and the bat, and another app about the L. Conan boxes, that is also incorporated in here, so it gives that visual support and helps them segment the word. And it's really cute. This app uses a roly-poly bug as visuals for long and short vowels, and those are in levels 1 through 4. So the short vowels were in the segment and blend section. It's just so user-friendly. I would start there if you were looking for one. The 8 grade word patterns, level 1, that's on the left, that's currently free on iTunes if you wanted to explore. And there are some basic ones with vowel consonant, which are the closed syllable words with short vowels. And then I just kind of highlighted some other apps that are available. Even going up through the Phonics Advanced, where your student is adding suffixes to words, that is usually a pretty difficult jump. So it's great that there is something that if they were familiar with the format of the app, that they could bridge over into those strategies as well. Okay, more apps. We have some sight word apps. In Orton Gillingham, we typically call them red words, words that are non-phonetic and stay non-phonetic, like come with the magic E obviously would not have a short O sound, or a schwa sound actually. To would always be a red word, but me with the open syllable, that's actually not always going to be a sight word. But your students in the younger levels of literacy are going to memorize that word before they understand about long vowels. So that's why that's a sight word. On this app, it's going to provide great practice for reading them. The student will listen to the word being read and then has to touch the word that matches from those 5 choices given. So you can see on the example I've included, the verbal prompt was to, and so the user would type to and then have the circle. It can be personalized. You can actually add your own words and even record your own voice reading them. So I think that's a great way to personalize it for your child's spelling list, or words that they're misspelling in writing, even using them for homophones and homonyms, there, and there, your and your, to and to. That would be a great app to kind of customize. The center picture, ABC Mouse, that's also a website, but these are fun stories that are read aloud with high quality narration and music. This was recommended to me by another teacher, and they're really good for beginning readers. It models good fluency and prosody, and that's the expression and rate of reading. And the third one listed on this, the Grammar Jammers, this one is so super fun. They're actually catchy animated songs and rhymes that make learning about parts of speech and sentences really entertaining. Students can then practice their skills after hearing the songs, and there's also versions for elementary and middle school, but those are not free. The basic one, the primary edition, is free. Okay, so when you've been practicing all of these phonological and phonics skills, remember the phonological awareness is without the visuals, without the letters, and then phonics is when we add the letters in, so they're starting to spell words, build words, read words. We immediately want to include vocabulary. We want them to understand the meaning behind the words, and that's why interaction with either really quality apps or obviously interpersonal reactions, explaining the words in their environment, even closing your eyes now and listening to the sounds. Maybe think about all the different names that you have for the sounds that you hear, or the nouns and items found around you. That's a great way to build vocabulary. Another thing that is awesome is identifying vocabulary by the affixes and roots or bases in the word. So a fabulous app that is extremely user-friendly is called Rootology, and it's by PI Roots. And it contains flashcards and drills for Greek and Latin roots and affixes. It also has some progress monitoring. And so you can keep looking for your personal best. So you can rank like how you did last time versus how you are doing this time. I've given 2 screenshots. If you, from their main menu, if you click on vocab rootology, you can see selections or options for progress, for flashcards, and for drills. On the right, you see if you clicked on drills, then you have like file folders. So you can click on breaking down words. You can look specifically at Latin or Greek roots or prefixes and suffixes. And I think one thing that I've noticed as a middle school teacher is that we wait too long to introduce that parts of words that may not be compound words, like dis, miss, un, re. Those are so common in our language, and they hold such tremendous meaning when attached to other bases and roots. But we wait until upper elementary or even middle school to explicitly instruct them. So I think it's so important to include those even in a phonological awareness aspect. When you're saying I'm going to reboot the computer, I'm not going to boot it again, as in like a boot that I wear, but like, what does that mean? And I bet your student already knows, like, you need to reset it. Push the button to reset your computer, to reset your iPhone. You're going to set it again. You're going to start over. So just modeling that, and that is a word part. So when you recognize the re on another word, either in text or in conversation, that still holds the same meaning, that you're going back or again. And so that's what I think this is a very valuable app in that context. Another app that would be awesome, I think, to even start in maybe 8th grade, 9th grade, is an SAT Word Slam. So this is extremely interactive. There are two modes, either test or teach. It's going to define the word, and I've included one of the test features on the screen at the bottom on the left. But it's going to define the word, it's going to give you examples of the word, and then how it applies in context, and then it builds on itself. So once you're successful with a certain word, then you may see that as a peripheral word in a new lesson. If you want to just learn 20 words, then the app is free. But if you, once you're finished with those 20 and you try it out and you realize how user-friendly it is, then you can upgrade just for $2.99 and it unlocks the remaining levels. But what's really great is if you have the test feature, or if you're quizzing yourself or going through the activity while it's teaching you, and you have the multiple choice option like is illustrated on the left, and perhaps you select the wrong word, then it will automatically take you back and reteach you the word. So it's not just going to say wrong, 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 wrong. You got 20% out of 10. Now go on. It's actually going to help you walk through it so that you actually learn from what you've just mistaked on the test. Another really important and really fun thing to do is to activate students' creativity. I think one of the other big things that we miss as parents and even educators is that most of our students with learning differences have so many strengths that are not capitalized on. So, and a huge one for students with learning differences is often creativity. And it's not necessarily the same type of creativity in every person, but I think we need to look for opportunities to incorporate literacy and math skills in a way that is fun and engaging. And if you have not tried auto wrap, then you have missed out. This can be installed on iOS or Android, and it accesses your microphone to turn your words into a rap song. And I think it's an awesome tool to build fluency. So you can turn any student, from the youngest to the most mature, into a rap artist. Like, name rhyming words and word families, maybe recite familiar poems, maybe even Dr. Seuss, maybe recite your math facts if you're practicing your addition facts or your multiples of 10, or 10 plus 1, 10 minus 1, your multiplication facts, or get creative and make your own lyrics. And what you do is just actually you pick your song and you turn on the app and you recite it into the app, and then you hit play, and it processes and turns your regular speech into the rap song. So it's not like you're having to rap and beatbox, that does it for you. So that's my kind of rapping. Another app that was recently introduced to me at a conference last week, in fact, is Video Star. It is free on iTunes for iOS users, and there's another app called Magisto for other platforms. But this makes music videos with visual effects running on a screen at the bottom. And you can upload it to YouTube or email it. And what's fabulous is it's an auto editing. So you can actually be the star and build on your creativity, like we were speaking about a moment ago. What's really great about singing even familiar lyrics is you're constantly modeling fluency. If you weren't fluent, then you would not be singing. So I think even rehearsing and practicing in this way would make that fluency piece come alive for your students. There are so many more literacy apps, but we've just highlighted a few of those. Now we're going to transition a little bit into math. Going back to kind of some fundamental skills, number sense, a student's fluidity and flexibility with numbers. is the definition of number sense. So I've given some visuals here. You can do things from books to apps to manipulatives, even just cutting apart construction paper. You need to develop a sense of what the numbers mean, what their relationship numbers have to one another, and really understand the symbolic representations. Like, use those in real world situations. Have your student pick out 3 bananas. Count aloud and in order. Practice skip counting. These are all on the go things. One-to-one is a huge fundamental skill. Count items one at a time. So make one pile and literally pick up one item or move it with an index finger and move it to a second pile while they count aloud. Model that. Like, have your bag at the grocery store. Let's pick up 3 apples. Let's put 1 apple in the bag, 2, and 3. I like this. It kind of made me giggle, and so I included it. Math makes your life add up. I think that's totally true. I don't teach math currently, but it's a fundamental skill, and we can turn literacy activities into math activities with the same manipulatives. And of course, your students want to know, is there an app for that? So sometimes the tendency is to move away from hands-on activities toward more pencil and paper tasks, but I would say that just like in Orton Gillingham for reading, using manipulatives even to memorize multiplication facts and moving into algebraic equations and especially geometry, hands-on activity is the key to unlocking that for some students. So incorporating apps with the multisensory piece. An app called Dexteria Dots offers highly visual kinesthetic ways to practice basic concepts. So I've given a visual on the left. So you're using visual tracking and motor planning. This is actually a little tricky for students who may even be past this stage. There are different levels of this game. This is a very basic one. So not only are they mastering the one-to-one correspondence by moving the blue dots into the sessions of 3, 4, 3, 2, but they're also seeing like some patterns, and you want them to recognize patterns not only in math but in language and in nature. That's just a part of the world we live in. Excuse me. The next step up would be place value. You want them to understand grouping tens, and up to 100 is an app that can help learning different students master some basic concepts about numbers, especially sequence. So you can see that they've color-coded it and it's manipulative. It's a lot of fun. An app that was recommended from an app, from a website blog that I'd seen called iGameMom. This app is free, and it helps visualize math concepts. So it really goes back to the base 10 model for math, but you can see that even in the example that I've included, it's multisensory for addition, but you can actually do multiplication for those. If you have 3 sets of something, 3 sets of 10 would be 30. So there's a visual representation of those numbers and concepts. It's a great thing. For multiplication, I know this is a huge hurdle, and I am not above the visual supports. I regularly made math folders for students who needed that visual support. Repeated instruction and repeated exposure is key. So if we can include these while we're on the go and make it fun and interesting, a lot of math is geometry and multiples, which goes into repeated addition as well as multiplication. There are so many great apps for that as well. Math Planet is one of them. It's also available on Google Play, Kindle Fire, and iTunes. There are hundreds of levels, and within this one app, there are 9 fun games, going from basic place value and number sense through concepts about time, geometry, and even multiplication, which is a really great value. This app is phenomenal for students who are still struggling with long division, just the concept of where the numbers go, because that's so key in organizing. This teaches the steps of the process in a visual and kinesthetic interaction, and it also, just like the other app we spoke about earlier for vocabulary, this app is going to prompt a miscue at every step. So it will not let you proceed if you are not in the right spot. It increases in difficulty as you master the concepts, so it learns the user, which is really phenomenal. IXL. IXL is a website as well, and they have a lot of games on their site, and you can even see just from the visual, not only do they have the grade level um, options for you to access material, but they also have the function. So you can go through place value, addition, subtraction, even graphing and patterns, which is really great. They also have games online. IXL also has language arts online as well. Okay, these are the most popular apps that my students currently like to play. We have a tech club after school, a couple of afternoons, and these are some popular ones that regularly come up, and this is with anywhere from 4th graders all the way through, I think we had 9th graders. So Cool Math is a website. They also have an app, and they have basic math, they have geometry where the block rolls around without trying to fall through the holes, so you have to anticipate how the cube will move. Geometry Dash is not as sophisticated, it's more like a race, but you have to anticipate how the geometric shapes would interact with each other through the course. And then Minecraft. I know there's a lot of talk about Minecraft. You know, I know my son, my 16-year-old is completely enthralled and has the online server and all of that, and I really had to really get my head around it. He is really quiet and stays home, but at the same time, that's his passion, and what he is able to do within this world and build relationships with people, and even coming to Tech Club and having, you know, students sit side by side and do that. The geometric surface of you know, looking at a 3D object on a 2-dimensional surface really takes talent. And when I tried to kind of enter that world, I really struggled with it. So I just think that there is true value in the creative mind and building the spatial awareness of playing. And yes, it offers group play as individual play, and it's also online and through your app. So I think that is still great because you're building and being super creative. Toward the end of part 1 here, I've included a link to this app site. It is kind of a resource for teachers and parents. You can see that you can select from the theme of the app to the grade level or special or flipped classroom, or if you're focused on Bloom taxonomy, really trying to increase, excuse me, the level of rigor. I know Bloom's was just updated, and the new top level is now the creative piece. So there are apps that would kind of address each level. And then you can look at webcasts. So I thought that was a really great resource that you might enjoy. The last 2 slides of part 1 are going back to some basics. We all probably remember riding in the car without an iPhone or without an iPad, and going back to some basics like license plate games. So I included one slide for reading, and one of my favorites is categories. I've included a visual like an ABC book. It was taken from the Institute for Multisensory Education's training materials, but the strategy is from 60 Strategies for Improving Reading Comprehension in Grades K through 8 by Kathleen Johnson. And essentially it's just like an ABC chart. You have a box for every letter. You could even make it A through Z on a piece of notebook paper. And you're going to look at license plates on the road or in parking lots, and you're going to use the letters you find to build words. And once all your squares are filled or your time runs out, the basic way you place categories is that you make 1-syllable words with the letters found, and when the time is up, only your original words that are not found on any other player's board score a point, so you could even see who wins. A way to kind of increase the level is to use only one letter from a license plate as the first letter of the word, and then think of rhyming words to fill all the other ABC boxes. And then maybe an advanced way to play would be to find the letters A through Z in ABC order, marking the boxes of the letter you find with the licensing state's name and abbreviation. Or maybe the capital of that state. Try to make that as much of a multisensory experience as possible, building on prior knowledge and even learning from one another. I love categories. And the way that we have used license plate games for math, first you can just read the plate. So the plate at the top of the page would say math 1234. Even when the letters don't spell a word, read it as a nonsense word and then read the number. If I'm focused on the math, I don't care what the letters. Insert the vowels if there's no vowels. That's fine. And then another fun thing would be make an alpha code. Assign each letter a number, like A is number 1, B is number 2, and then decipher the license plate code. Today we're going to add, like that's the code, we're adding them all. Then we're subtract, multiply, divide, and then and have fun with it and see who makes the biggest number, see who has the best rate going, like from here to target. And I'm going to see how many I can make and decipher the code. This is the end of part 1, which is reading and math activities on the go. I really hope that you found that that was helpful and have some new strategies to help make time on the go count. I have this slide now. At the end, I also have this information, but you're welcome to email me and follow me on Pinterest or on Twitter. I see some apps that I follow posted on Twitter as well. Jen, do you have anything to add on any of that so far?
No, I think you did a great job, Jenny. Thank you so much. We've had a lot of questions about the apps and age levels and appropriateness for different students. I've been trying to answer even as you've been discussing.
Sure.
What really the big question was, we had, how long should a child spend using the tablet with these apps? Or what is your opinion on that as a teacher?
Well, I think it depends on the age and stage. I mean, as a teacher, I think that if the app is academic in value, then if it's building a skill that they need reinforced and there is actually a multisensory piece, then I think it adds value. Because if it's going to build connections in the brain and build prior knowledge that the student can then access in a more academic setting, then I think that that is key. And I think communication between, school and home is just as important, and letting them know, like, well, we're a fan of this, and this seems to be working, and we've worked on this skill. And if it's translating into the classroom or into the work, I mean, if your student will go home even off the tablet and, recognize rhymes, recognize phonemes and graphemes, recognize syllables, then I think that just reinforces the value.
Absolutely, and I like the idea of being interactive with your child while you're using the apps. If you're able to engage with them and have them apply what they've learned with a dialogue, I think that's really important, because it reinforces the comprehension of the app, it reinforces the comprehension of the lesson, and it also provides an opportunity to engage and understand your child's learning style.
Well, that absolutely is key, and I think that this would go hand in hand with exactly what you just mentioned, is generalizing the skill. If, even in class, whether it's on tablet or in the classroom or at bedtime or whatever, that moment is, if your student can't take the skill out of that moment and apply it in a different way, then whatever that activity is may not have the value you think it does. So I think generalization is key.
Absolutely. And we were talking earlier, or in the chat dialogue on the side, someone had mentioned that they didn't realize that Minecraft was also useful for math skills.
Yes.
I think it's important that we remember that these apps are not just for one specific skill, or games are not for one specific skill, but also can be broadened into many different areas and can access different academic skills as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so it looks like we're ready for part 2. Are you ready for part 2, Jenny?
I am. Let me go over here and
while you get that set up, I just will let you know I will be here to continue answering questions. So please do not hesitate to ask questions while Jenny continues on with part 2 of this webinar.
Great. Okay, so this part is a little bit shorter. I realize the time. But the second part is fight the summer slide at home. So I've just compiled just a few slides with some ideas to jumpstart ways that you might look around your house and find things to reinforce reading and math skills that are fun and multisensory. The first, we'll go back to those basic pieces of phonological awareness. We won't go through every single level again, but just highlight some ideas. So at the listening stage, you might use pictures or a children's storybook. I put a couple of my favorites when my boys were little. I Went Walking was the first book that my oldest son received when he was born, and we read it for years. But just modeling, even how the pages of a book turn, but using those familiar texts to build in the sounds and the awareness, because you really want to build the idea of, and I keep going back to the animal and the sounds they make, but it's so foundational that you later apply that with the phonemes and graphemes when they go to those basic literacy skills. Another great author is Sandra Boynton. I think at one point we had every book she'd ever written. So those have a lot of onomatopoeia in them, and they're relating the sounds and words with the animals. So I think those are great jumping off points. So regardless of the text you use, building listening skills from familiar resources is really great. Rhyming, the Cat in the Hat is a popular one. Even using popular nursery rhymes, Jack and Jill Went Up the Hill, talking about rhymes, those ending the word families. And again, real and nonsense words are acceptable. Please do not shut down learning because it's not a word that you would use in real life. I've kind of jumped to some short vowel sound games. In the Institute for Multisensory Education, we tend to use vowel tents or vowel sticks, but I would challenge, like, anything you have around the house can be turned into a game to practice short vowels. I would definitely stick with short vowels until those are mastered and then practice some long vowel sounds. But this the vowel sound cup game I took from a blog called Coffee Cups and Crayons, and she has some really good ideas as well. But have your child look away and hide something under, like hide a bead or a rock or something under one of the cups, and then verbally give them the sound of the short vowel. And then they're going to listen. You really want them to repeat it because, again, you want them to be able to hear, to think about the sound. You want them to activate the auditory processing, and then go back and look under the cup. And if they're correct, when they lift the correct cup, then they'll find the rock or the bead. So that's a fun game. Another multisensory fun thing, I've included the visual here of the cards with the capital letters, but if you have index cards or pieces of paper cut up small, I would have my child write or paint or draw letters onto those cards. Younger students, have them trace it. You could write the letter in highlighter or dot to dot and have them connect it. I would make a whole set for capital letters if my student needed that practice, and make a second set of just lowercase. I would never put the capital and lowercase on the same card because those get into spelling rules, which can be misunderstood later if they've always seen those letters side by side. But then you can have I think this is just like a wooden tray or a paper plate or a small box or something to hold some kind of grainy texture. Sand is great. There's a multisensory sand called sand, I believe. You can mix salt, playground sand, rice, anything like that. And then you want them to practice forming the letters in the sand or the salt, whatever the multisensory is, while they say it. So for the visual that's on here, I would say F says F, and as I said that, I would trace it in the sand with my finger. The key about this tactile experience, just to build and get maximum effect, is you want your student to use the pad of the index finger of the hand they hold their pencil with. So if I'm right-handed, I'm going to use the fingerprint side of my finger of the index finger on my right hand to draw in the sand. And I'm going to mimic the letter of the card I see as I say it. Then I would move to the next card. Eventually, what you can do to kind of make it more fun and make it a game is take the visual away and just give your student the sound. Say eyes on me or look at me. The sound is k, and they would say, oh, k. I know that C says k. And then another way to make it even more an intermediate skill would be, tell me all the ways you know how to spell k. Well, we know C says k, K says k. Maybe your student knows CK says k. So these are all great ways to reinforce the practice. And here at the end of the school year, maybe you want to have that conversation with your teacher. What multiple spellings have you taught? What do you see in their writing? And you have their work come home to you. You can look through their writing and see what skills that you need to reinforce. Another fun game using craft sticks, and I've highlighted the multicolor craft sticks, but these could work with the humdrum craft sticks, just the plain wood, the natural, or you could even use strips of paper. And the Zap It would be cardstock, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So you can make word puzzles. So you could use this at home. It also travels easily, but you could use high-frequency words. You could use phonetic words that follow patterns. You could even adapt this for math using addition and subtraction families or multiplication facts. But the idea with the matching puzzle is that you line up two side by side, and then you write whatever it is, the word or the math fact, across both of them, and then when you mix them all up, then it becomes a puzzle. You have to find the ones that match the top and the bottom, and then they can read the word or spell the word or whatever the adaptation might be. On the Zap It game, we and my previous campuses have called this the Oh No game. There would be either high frequency words or phonetic words on the sticks, and then on random sticks it would say Zap It or Oh No. So you pull one out of the pile and you have to read it. If you read it correctly, you keep it. Then your partner goes. If they read their word correctly, you keep it. If you draw the oh no or the Zap It, you have to put all your sticks back in the pile. What's really great is not only could you read them, but if you had them and maybe your partner read the word to you, and then for you to keep the stick, you had to spell it aloud. So this can be adapted across the grade levels. It can be vocabulary, it can be kindergarten sight words, it can be anywhere in the middle. You can even solely focus on roots and affixes and maybe tell what they mean and have the meaning on the back. So that's a really great adaptable game. Just like we mentioned earlier with the apps, I had talked about Elkonin boxes. So this really goes into the phonics piece. So you can see in the top illustration that you begin with a picture of an item, and then you add either a manipulative or the letter representing each sound to each of the boxes. So that would be a bat, and so they have the b, the a, and the t, and then they could spell it. Once fluent in segmenting and blending, then you can add the letter sounds like we just talked about. An adaptation would be at the bottom. And this is something that you could make on the fly. It's not like you have to download pictures and Elkonin boxes and all of those things. Excuse me. Get a note card, put garage sale stickers, or even get a crayon or a highlighter and make a green dot, a yellow dot, and a red dot. So you want to model that we read from left to right, so that's why we put the green on the left, and I even put a number 1 on the green dot, like start here. Put an arrow starting on the left, going to the right. So there's 3 levels of modeling or visual cues already on the card before you ever start. So I took a picture of myself working it. So you can have blocks. I mean, I purchased those out of the $1 bin at Target one day, and I think there was like 12 in the bag. But you can start with that. You can use counters. You can use squares of paper. But you want to say, like, the word is cob. So we want to segment the word. We have k, a, b. You want them to break down and identify each individual phoneme. Just like when we did sentences earlier on, before we did syllables, we were clapping and counting those. You want to break apart and count how many sounds are in the word. So we have k, a, b. Then you would add in the letters, like the very bottom of the screen. So whether you're using the Elkonin boxes at the top or the card at the bottom, you identify the number of sounds first, and then you add the visual support of the letters back in, moving from left to right. Digraphs are often challenging for either students who have speech concerns or those early phonetic patterns tend to create frustration for our students or our children, because those are consonants that should say, like sh, should say s. So it's the first time that they're encountering where two letters come together and make a brand new sound. So you want to activate as many modalities as possible. You want them to see it, hear it, spell it, say it, sort it. You want muscle memory, which is a great tool that can be adapted. I've highlighted it with my digraphs, but they have these learning chopsticks. Those use the same muscles that your student's going to use for proper pencil grip. So they don't know that they're practicing that, but they think it's cool that they have a dinosaur or car, you know, chopsticks. So they dig in a multisensory item like beans or rice or sand and pull out words. And then you can sort by where the digraph is found, whether it's in the beginning, the middle, the end. When would a digraph be in the middle? Well, what do you think? What about compound words? Bathtub. I could have had that in the pile, and then the TH would have sat in the middle of my word. And you'll notice as the adult that even there's visual reinforcement when they're sorting. The green words all had them at the beginning. The orange cards all had the digraph at the end. There's no harm in that. I tutored a student yesterday, and he never realized that they were color-coded. He continued to analyze each word that he drew out of that box of beans for where the digraph was and sorted it. And then this other, the flip chart at the top left, I think that's a great way to use a really inexpensive item to make an on-the-go practice set. So you can put different sounds at the different positions of the words and make a blending activity that you could either use at home or on the go. See how many nonsense words or real words that you might make. Even have them write it down and sort whether it's real or nonsense. Use it in a sentence. All great activities. Ocean-themed activities are always a hit, whether you're in the classroom or at home. The reason that I like them is that it lends to multisensory very easily. What do you do at the beach? What do you do at the ocean? You play in the sand and the water. So incorporate both. Have a bucket of suds. Have a box of sand. Build those connections. So whether you have, like if you're at the beach, maybe you have those EA long vowel sounding E words, and then you do the beginning, middle, and sort again. But they will do the work, the phonics work after, if they've played. Even if you don't make them write it right now, if they're sorting by pulling out cards or pulling out the items themselves, maybe you have plastic items, a crab or any kind of item buried in there, and then they can sort by whether it's a vowel sound or the blend. Moving on to some multisensory things that you have around the house already for math. Legos, boy, girl, old, young, I guarantee you we all have Legos. I even had a friend give me a box of her brother's Legos out of her mom's attic. She thought we could use them. The great thing about Legos is you can see that we're going to talk about addition, but you're going to use those Legos again for multiplication. First, let's look. You can add the Legos. You can have 4 Legos stacked plus 3 Legos stacked, and then put them together and count each individual block as its own unit. If you've never seen a part whole map, I've included one of those at the bottom. You can use for addition or subtraction. So you would put, for addition, I would put the 4 items in the top left, then the 3 in the top right, and then I would kind of sweep them all down, because you're adding, you're putting them all together, and then I would count how many were in the hole at the bottom. For subtraction, I would just flip the chart upside down from how you see it now. I would have the whole group of 7 at the top. If I took away 3, I would pull 3 down to one box and then pull the remaining and count them, so that you would see that there was 4 left over. So that part whole map can be just drawn on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard, or even on an app, a drawing app. Place value and grouping tens. We made bean sticks. So you would just glue 10 beans to those craft sticks or strips of paper or cardboard. Those are always fun, and then you can visually see that there's 10 on there, even if your student needed to recount them a couple of times. That's easily done. We also used a 100 chart to make a puzzle. And so they had to build, if the chart goes down a square, you know it adds 10. If it goes up, it subtracts 10. To the right, you add 1, and to the left, you subtract 1. So you can make some puzzles. And I would not take away the 100 chart. Let them use their resources. I know I use resources all the time. I look up how to spell words. I look up numbers. I use a calculator. So teaching students to use their resources is valuable. I wouldn't take away that support. I like to move it. So one of the things that I found on YouTube was learning multiplication facts with rhythm, and they had different ones for different fact families. So I've included the picture on there and then the link for faster times tables. And those are really cool, even if your student wants to incorporate some of those other apps we talked about earlier and make up their own rhythm. Use VideoStar, use the Rap app, and try to make up a multiplication family. When I spoke earlier, just a moment ago, about the Legos being multi-purpose, so you can see here in the first picture, work within a family. So all of those Legos have 4 kind of teeth on them. So you have 2 times 4. You would count each individual bump on the Lego so that they would see the answer. So you have 3 times 4, 4 times 4. So that's just another way to use those multiplication for those basic fact families. You could also use the puzzle game we spoke about for addition. You could use that for multiplication and have the reference be a multiplication chart and talk about that. That is the end of slides section 2. Again, I have boards on Pinterest that have math activities. I have language activities. I also have spectrum learner activities and all sorts of things if you wanted to go and see if any of those apps or links were helpful for your situation. Jen, did we have any questions over the second section or even from the first? I'd be happy to answer.
Sorry, I've just clicked my microphone on.
No problem.
We did have a lot of great ideas you presented, Jenny, and I think the multisensory approach is so helpful.
Yes.
And a lot of good comments about combining the interactive and multisensory approaches with an iPad or with something that's two-dimensional.
Yes.
Is very, very helpful. Just looking at the questions, a lot of it just was supportive of what you were saying. The sand idea is wonderful. I mentioned that a lot of our lower school teachers use shaving cream.
Yes. Oh, that's a huge hit.
It is wonderful, and it also helps clean the desks. So
it does.
It's a win-win on both sides. I'm just looking, kind of reviewing the comments real quickly. I think really you covered a lot of wonderful stuff that helped, and a lot of the questions you answered, the people who responded were also encouraging and helping with that. So I don't see on the side so far any additional questions at all.
Okay. Well, I would,
job.
if they think of questions later, I would welcome those via email, and I would be happy to follow up if something comes up later.
Absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Jenny.
Sure. Thank you.
And Jen, you did a nice job answering those questions in the chat.
Thanks. I apologize for any misspelled words.
Well, maybe you need to use one of those apps.
I know. Fair enough.
Well, I learned a whole lot, and my son's graduating from high school. I wish I had some of those, but I think we might do some of these over the summer. Well, I wanted to also, let's put up some of the last slides. I don't see them myself, so I don't know if they're up or not. But I wanted to also let everybody know that the slides and the webinar that you heard tonight will be recorded, or is being recorded, and so you'll be able to get those almost immediately after we conclude the webinar. And also, if you want to see Jenny in action, she's in a couple of our LDA videos. So, and she's actually using shaving cream in one of them. So
Yeah.
you can see her in action there, and Jen's in there with her daughter, and actually we all go to Dallas Academy, so I'm in there with my son. So it's the Ginny, Jen, and Beth show. Um, anyway, also we wanted to let you know that LDA is a membership organization, and that's how we provide the services for our members is through a membership. When you become a member of LDA, you are also a member of the state affiliate, and we have 35 state affiliates. We also have some local affiliates as well. And so um, we have some archived webinars. One is on the basics of LD, and it goes through all the different specific learning disabilities in a webinar. You can only get that through members only. So we would love it if you could join. We have a newsletter, and we have discounts, and we have our next oops, little typo there. Our next conference is in 2016, February 15th through the 18th. Is going to be in Orlando, so we're excited about that. So let's move it to the next slide. So till the end of the month, we are going to have some membership giveaways. So if you join or renew your membership through May 31st, we are going to do a little raffle. So one of those is a book. Our professional advisory board chair is Dr. Jerome Schultz, and he's written a wonderful book called Nowhere to Hide: Why Kids with ADHD and LD Hate School and What We Can Do About It. I have personally read this book, and it is, I have to say, I read it and it's like, aha, that's why my son does that. So highly recommended, and so we're going to also give it out as a membership giveaway, and it will be autographed. The other thing that we're going to give away are these specific learning disability bookmarks. We'll put that in your name in a raffle for that if you join or renew by the end of the month. But for this webinar, if you attended this webinar, we'll do another little raffle, and we will give you a LDA mug just for attending. Not everybody will get one because we don't have enough, but we will do a little raffle, and we will send you one of those and notify you that you've won. So we really, really appreciate that you came tonight. I hope you got a lot out of it. I know I did. And if you wouldn't mind, we'll be sending out a little survey. So if you wouldn't mind filling that out. We'd love ideas for other webinars, and we will be doing that as well. One of the things that we thought about was it's going to be called LDA Live, and so each maybe month or every other month we'll be having a panel of experts that will answer questions on specific topics. So tune in for that. Oh, there's Jenny.
Hi.
So thank you again to Jenny and Jen and everybody who attended for your participation in this LDA webinar. And I think that's it, unless you have anything else to say, Jenny or Jen.
I'm good. Thank you so much. It was great.
No, and I appreciate all the questions. If I didn't get an answer to you, a response to you, I will definitely respond shortly, either tonight or tomorrow. So thank you so much for being here.
Great. Well, I don't think we have any more questions. Oh, we will have, it says, can you post the download link again, Erica? We'll do that.
I will actually send the download link to everyone who attended. So I have all of your emails, and I will send that PDF very shortly after we wrap up here.
Okay. Well, I think we're ready to wrap up. So thank you for coming, and this concludes the webinar.